Hi Year 3, it's Miss McGuinness. We are going to move on to chapter 6 now of Fantastic Mr. Fox, and this chapter is called The Race. So we are going to find out who's going to win the race between Fantastic Mr. Fox and the farmers, Boggis, Bunce and Bean. So I will show you the Vipers questions and I'll read you the chapter and then I'll put the Vipers questions up a second time and then you can write down your answers and check them with mine at the end. Okay, I hope you enjoy it. Let's see what happens, shall we? So chapter 6 is called The Race. Now there began a desperate race, the machines against the foxes. In the beginning, the hill looked like this. I'm just going to pause there because our first Viper question is a vocabulary question and it says, find a word on page 24 that shows it is vital that the foxes escape. So have a look in that first section at the top of the page and see which word you're going to choose and then write it down. In the beginning, the hill looked like this. So you can see it's quite steep. After about an hour, as the machines bit away more and more soil from the hilltop, it looked like this. You can see the crater forming right at the top. Sometimes the foxes would gain a little ground and the clanking noises would grow fainter. And Mr. Fox would say, "We're going to make it, I'm sure we are." But then a few moments later, the machines would come back at them and the crunch of their mighty shovels would get louder and louder. Once the foxes actually saw the sharp metal edge of one of the shovels as it scraped up the earth just behind them. Oh, I wonder what will happen next. "Keep going, my darlings," panted Mr. Fox. "Don't give up." "Keep going," the fat Boggis shouted to Bunce and Bean. "We'll get them any moment now." "Have you caught sight of them yet?" Bean called back. "Not yet," shouted Boggis, "but I think you're close." "I'll pick him up with my bucket," shouted Bunce. "I'll chop him to pieces." But by lunchtime the machines were still at it, and so were the poor foxes. The hill now looked like this. Oh my goodness, what a change. Doesn't look much of a hill anymore. The farmers didn't stop for lunch. They were too keen to finish the job. Okay, if we stop there, one of our questions is a retrieval question that says, why didn't the farmers stop for lunch? So I want you to have a think, find your answer and then write it down. "Hey there, Mr. Fox," yelled Bunce, leaning out of his tractor. "We're coming to get you now." "You've had your last chicken," yelled Boggis. "You'll never come prowling around my farm again." A sort of madness had taken hold of the three men. The tall, skinny Bean and dwarf pot-bellied Bunce were driving their machines like maniacs, racing the motors and making the shovels dig at a terrific speed. The fat Boggis was hopping around like a dervish and shouting, "Faster! Faster!" By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, this is what had happened to the hill. Oh my goodness. I'm not sure if you can call that a hill anymore. I wonder what we could call it instead. Doesn't look like a hill to me. The hole the machines had dug was like the crater of a volcano. It was such an extraordinary sight that crowds of people came rushing out from the surrounding villages to have a look. They stood on the edge of the crater and stared down at Boggis and Bunce and Bean. "Hey there, Boggis, what's going on?" "We're after a fox." "You must be mad." The people jeered and laughed, but this only made the three farmers more furious and more obstinate and more determined than ever not to give up until they had caught the fox. Okay, so at this point we'll stop. One of our inference questions was, why do the villagers gather around, laugh and jeer? So have a think from the villagers' point of view, why would this scene look rather amusing or funny? Okay, let's see what happens next. Oh, next is chapter 7, so we'll have to stop there. Just so you can see, chapter 7 is We'll Never Let Him Go. So I wonder what that means. Okay, our last question is a summarise question, a summary. So the question says, summarise the emotions felt by Boggis, Bunce and Bean. And remember, you can rewind the video clip whenever you want to, if you want to go back and check your answer. Okay, so write down a summary of the emotions felt by Boggis, Bunce and Bean. So these are the answers to the Vipers question for chapter number 6 of Fantastic Mr. Fox. So the first question was a vocabulary question about the first couple of sentences we looked at. And it says, find a word on page 24 that shows it is vital that the foxes escape. So have a look at your answer, or go back and have a look and listen to the text and see which word shows that it's vital that they escape. My answer is desperate. So the word desperate really shows that they were in lots of trouble, and it was very important or vital that they escape from the farmers. The next question is a retrieval question. So you would have to look in the text to find out, why didn't the farmers stop for lunch? Let's have a look at my answer and you can compare with yours. The farmers were too focused on catching Mr. Fox to stop for lunch. So in the text it showed us how busy they were, how focused they were on catching Mr. Fox, so they didn't have time to stop for lunch. The third question is an inference question. Why do the villagers gather round, laugh and jeer? So remember, for an inference question you need to use your knowledge of the book so far and think about the point of view of the characters. So my answer was, the villagers laughed because the farmers had dug a crater just to get a fox. And maybe they felt that was quite amusing, not really a very sensible thing to do. Okay, now the last question was a summarise question. And it was, summarise the emotions felt by Boggis, Bunce and Bean. So in this chapter, the farmers felt desperate, determined, angry, keen, frantic and obstinate. Now some of those words that show how the characters were feeling come from the text, and some are from my knowledge of the character. I wonder if you know what the word obstinate means. It's not a word that we hear very often. And obstinate is another word for stubborn. Okay, so it's when you keep going even though someone maybe has pointed out that you should stop. And if you're stubborn, you keep going till the end. And I think that's exactly what the farmers are doing. So have a look over your answers. Compare them with mine. I hope you're enjoying the story so far. And I will see you next time for chapter 7. Goodbye.